Hello? Yeah, right? Here we are. L'sGA. Right? Okay. What? Hello? Someone's waving to me. Oh, I'm supposed to be over here, I think. Because, right, I know. There's like a dark spot here in the middle, right? Okay. I'm in the light of the video. Okay. Thank you all for being here. My name is Christoph Preissing, and I run this thing in Chicago called Non-Op Open Opera Works. So it's not really opera, thus non-op. But sometimes there's singers, and sometimes there's dancers, and sometimes there's video, and sometimes there's everything. And sometimes there's research, and sometimes there's archives. And so I encourage you to check out our website, and on the front of the program there's a QR code, and that will take you to the L'sGA homepage, and there's also a survey there. And so we'd really like to get your feedback. So this whole project, L'sGA, what does the Gettysburg Address mean to you? And it means, I think, a lot of different things to different people. And it depends on maybe on how old you are, what your background is, what you look like, what you've been through, your experience, your education. So we posed this question to 3 or 4 artists, black artists, during the summer of 2020, and we asked them to, oh, and then there was light. Thank you. We're live streaming. So we posed this question to several people, black artists, and they made responses. We've also done a new performance production of L'sGA with Willie Prince Rock Round, and we have just an amazing group of artists tonight. And I just wanted to say a couple things about what we're doing here, because I don't want to talk too long. First, I want to say that the program is funded by the Illinois Arts Council, and it's their arts tour program. Last night we were in Bloomington. Here we are today in Urbana, and then a week from today we are in Chicago at Elastic Arts. And so without their support, and without the support really of everyone who put this together, and truly it's not me. I've been very fortunate. I feel like I'm at a point where people are doing things that I don't have to worry. They actually get done. So I'm really happy about that. And so thank you everybody who contributed to this. Frank and Jake and Theo and all the artists and Miriam and the Independent Media Center, everyone really, it's just been a pleasure. Collaboration is really, really important. It's important in life, it's important in the arts. And Sal did not write this piece by himself. It did not come about in a vacuum, okay? And composers usually exist in ivory towers. But Sal was really great friends with Michael Holloway, and they hung out a lot. Yeah, right? And I think without Michael, this piece would not have happened. And so, poets and lyricists, they generally don't get the credit that they're deserved. So we really wanted to present work by Michael Holloway and just to acknowledge his contribution to this production. So what we're going to have here, before we actually see L'sGA and the other 3 responses, is we're going to have some background on L'sGA and the Gettysburg Address. We're going to have a reading of the Gettysburg Address. We're going to have a reading of poetry by Holloway, read by Mark Enslin, and we're going to have a presentation by the writers of Oya. There was a workshop here today while we were setting up that was run by Kao Ra Zen, one of the artists, and Ja Nelle Davenport-Pleasure, who is the Urbana Poet Laureate. And then we're going to have a presentation or a conversation with Bill Kemp, who's a historian at the McCleon County Museum of History, and Pete Shungu here at the U of I. And then we will have another variation on the Gettysburg Address, written by Cameron Locke and recited or read by Kao Ra Zen. And all of that before we launch into L'sGA. Right? No. Right! Okay. Are you ready? Kao, you out there? I can't see a thing. Okay, here's Kao Ra Zen.
Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, Bliss copy. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth.
Michael Holloway wrote a lot of kinds of poetry: serious, humorous, satirical, philosophical, puzzling, activist, angry, indescribable, and sometimes all at once. I'm going to read approximately 4. 700,000 dead. 700,000 dead. The issue? Slavery. The issue? Secession. Can you leave the Union? 700,000 dead over the ownership of human beings? Involuntary servitude? Can you leave? Can anyone leave any situation? That the LA uprising of '92 left 56 dead, only double the usual murder rate in Los Angeles in 1 week, 12,500 arrested, wouldn't mean nothing if it weren't for TV in America, where violence is the measure. Fine. Thank you. The flaw called death. If people can get a thrill from bowling, it's not so difficult to imagine that there are those who get a thrill from killing. There are no flaws in America where violence is the measure. This is the Dance Rec Program 12, Part A. You will have to do your own research to find Parts B and 13 in the Rocking House book. A. The Dance Rec Program 12. A. Entropy Warlock, the unborn troubadour, throws it out, goes to find again, some confusion, turns his shield to the sun. Noon other leaf is worth a bean. Tree stripping, bark stretching out of tree. This the shadow, and that the reflection. Something moves. No. Is there a cloud to swallow, or some other nearby source of water? No. He takes the water with him in his skin. His catch echoes from the deserted granary to the deep, dull red, broken fire brick road, a constellation in the cinders and soil. Tack is a sponge magic lighter and a door natural marker. He's been to the top. Cave lifts sun open, turns in out past the storm rise. So olwe nim noetitura ondes metaferta. Entropy leaps on a log with blue paint or fungus splashed on it. An earthquake swallows his eyeball, the only one outside a loony bin that can. Into the tree, he thinks the seat part is tub, but sits trap, tease okay. Make ready came echo eater's intake and shouts down more voice noise. Temperate zone hurricane. It's not the shit. It's the fan. World is full of shit. Can't get away from the shit. Get away from the fan. Don't trip. 600 mile per hour or 965.6,082,527 10 millionths kilometer per hour shit is a real problem. It will hurt you, and it will hurt you good. Don't trip now. Get away from the fan. Also, flying sweets, chocolate, biscotti, green beans, dal, and other airborne lovelies can kill your ass when encountered at sufficient velocity. Velocity because speed and direction are important, as in traveling fast and striking not you can be sort of funny when the speeding turd hits someone else's red-faced head, or kinda cute as the lips shape that elegant fish-mouthed zero toward the end of ow. A friend, under duress, once pointed out to me that in the case of a crock of shit, the crock simply serves to keep the shit outside the crock from getting on the shit inside the crock. Don't trip, block, or transport. Are you pro-croc or pro-fan? Profane or pro-croak? A croc fan or fan croc? A crock pot, top quart crackpot? Don't be shit sure and fan foolish. Don't trip. Don't trip now. Excerpts from Dance Rec. Yes. Yes. That these dead die in vain, government. We in honor dead resolve to cause devotion. Punish after birth, purple nude dead. We're three dumb pupils from Sockdolager. Governate up the people, try the people, fuck the people. It is we who consecrate the dead to life. It is we who dedicate the living to die. New government, God nation, freedom people, dead task, great trouble, living people, noble dead, civil war, hallowed words, shallow words, hollow words. Wer hassestak orte, dona mel de vis hinkpool, tok ini it. And as for the military, some of them are fine people, but the world no longer has use for them. The empires fell about their institutions, and the institutions fall upon the people. The thought of that great death wiggle, well now, it makes me toss and turn until I'm bruised from trying to sleep. If it's sour, throw it out. If it's sour, throw it out. If it's sour, throw it out!
Good evening, everyone. Oh, I like that. Thank you. So I am here to make the presentation on behalf of the Writers of Oya. You guys can come on up. The Writers of Oya was a group that was founded by Ashanti Files, the previous poet laureate, and she went into the middle schools to talk to young girls about safe ways to express their trauma, express their emotions through spoken word and spit poetry, and it was a wonderful experience. I am here because she cannot be, and I did a workshop earlier today with regards to the Writers of Oya and had a lovely turnout of young people and adults, which was great. And what we did is we, how do I describe it? We walked through what the Gettysburg Address means to them as young people and as adults. And the workshop consisted of me doing art on top of allowing them to express their emotions through this spoken word. Kao actually read two different versions of the Gettysburg Address, and they were able to put those thoughts and emotions not only into different pieces of artwork. Each color represents a different word, and each word represents a poem. This was done by our youth poet laureate, and I will try to explain it as best I can since she was not able to be here this evening. But each color represented a different word. So the ocean blue is melancholy, the flamingo pink was war, the light pink was honesty, change was red, deep red was equality, hollows was white, ideas was powder blue, and freedom was teal. And she mixed all of these together to create her own story versus speaking them out loud. So this was another way that we kind of used art with poetry. I'm going to read her poem, and then I'm going to allow the two participants, a mother-daughter duo, to come and share what they did for the workshop today. So this is the poet laureate, youth poet laureates. This melancholy war kills honesty, changes equality, and hollows the ideas of freedom. So that was Miss Delilah Nash. So we have a mother-daughter duo. This is Journey Curry and her mother, Justaria Curry.
Okay, so I didn't know that we were supposed to bring those up, so I'm just gonna read the poem that I wrote. They did a memorial for our people, but what about our people? Do we matter in this world? All they did was slaughter our people because of the jealousy that was building up in them, because we did things they couldn't, because they can't be like us. Just look at today. White people having dreads or braids, white people acting or using our slang. But if we said something that they think is wrong, they think it's offensive. When we create something special, they stick to us like gum on a shoe. But when we make mistakes, they disappear like a hamburger off of a plate. When they make mistakes, they didn't do anything wrong. It's just a mistake. Just my thoughts.
All right. Well, first, let me thank Janelle and Kao for an awesome workshop here. We've learned so much, and I am a product of public school. Shame to say that, but I am a product of public school. So, Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address. I'm also from Springfield. So, Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address was presented to us in a different way, and from one side. And so, I decided to look at it from the other side, the truth of his impact and what happened and what the Gettysburg Address meant. So again, thank you, Janelle and Kao, for this opportunity and for this workshop. We really appreciate it and learned a lot. So, all right, so really quickly. What I got from it was read the fine print. Of the people, by the people, and for the people. But what people? The reality is that the Gettysburg Address was not meant for us. This was a contract for white America. And the fine print reads, this does not apply to niggas, Negroes, Hebrews, niggers, porch monkeys, darkies, colored, nor any brown race. Exclusion, you lying, veiled, shame, deceit. Of the people, by the people, and for the people. But what people?
Thank you all very much.
Okay, we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Bill Kemp. I'm the librarian at the not-for-profit McCleon County Museum of History in downtown Bloomington. And it's an honor here. I feel very fortunate. I was at the program yesterday in Bloomington witnessing these incredible artists do incredible things, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pete Shungu. I'm a professor in music education at the University of Illinois. I'm a lifetime educator. I'm also an artist myself, so I'm a trumpet player, a spoken word poet. And I wasn't able to make the Bloomington event, so this is the first opportunity that Bill and I have to kind of have a conversation together. So we're going to kind of, play off of each other and reflect on what Lincoln's Gettysburg Address meant back then and what it means now.
So we've got about 12 minutes or so, and Christoph is going to cut us off when it's time. But I guess I'll tackle the what did the Gettysburg Address mean, right? first off, I think it's a mistake to put Lincoln on a pedestal, and we're lucky nobody's doing that here tonight, right? There's plenty to criticize. For example, recent scholarship has shed the light that Lincoln supported the heinous policy of colonization, that is forcibly, in many ways, removing freed people from North America and planting them in West Africa or the Caribbean, as if that was going to solve the issues the nation was grappling with. So, you know, new scholarship in this instance is showing Lincoln in not so enviable light, and I think we need to see the complete man, because that's the only way we do justice with the past, right? But I think one thing we do tend to forget is just how radical Lincoln was in the 1850s, right? He believed in three things his entire life. Slavery was a moral wrong. Slavery should not be allowed to expand. And if you hem it in where it exists, where it's constitutionally protected, it will wither and die on the vine. So he was a moderate. He was no abolitionist, right? He wanted to solve this problem progressively, slowly, as peacefully as possible, right? For many in the audience, that would be just too damn slow, right? And we've already heard that. And I think there's much to be said about that case, right? So beginning in 1854 with passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which threatens to expand slavery into heretofore free northern territories, for Lincoln, that's a fire bell in the night. That's an existential threat to the Union. Slavery cannot expand into territories. Again, Lincoln was no abolitionist. He never called for its abolishment where it was constitutionally protected. His personal views on the equality of black people was troubling at this time, right? He matures later, especially in the White House, we believe. But we would call Lincoln and his views in the 1850s racist, right? But nonetheless, right, he believed that slavery was a moral wrong and it had to be hemmed in, and then it would wither and die on the vine. So beginning in 1854, he dedicated his public and political life to halting the expansion of this institution, and that led to a new political movement, right? His Whig Party collapses under the strain of slavery, and from the ashes of the Whig Party, pulling in anti-slavery Democrats, pulling in abolitionists, pulling in German immigrants that embraced kind of these ideas of liberty, right? They form what's first known as the Anti-Nebraska Party. This is the Anti-Slavery Expansion Party. They will later take the name Republican Party, and Lincoln shepherds that through. Bloomington is where the Illinois Republican Party is formed on May 29th, 1856, and Lincoln gives what's known as the lost speech, right? And for years, as you could imagine, the McLean County Republican Party wanted to celebrate this event. But what they could not talk about, right, was the radicalism of what Lincoln said that evening, right? And the radicalism of this movement he was bringing in, this anti-slavery expansion party. So I think that's one thing we tend to forget is the radicalism. So the McLean County Republican Party had no interest. They didn't want to hear Lincoln talking about black people or the issue of slavery or racial equality, right? They wanted to celebrate the birth of this political party, which by the turn of the last century become very conservative and wanted nothing to do with those issues. So again, what we know of the political parties today, they were dramatically different in the 1850s.
Yeah, thank you. As I reflect on then and now, the first thing that comes to my mind is the more things change, the more things stay the same. That I think, you know, a couple of things. I think number one, that as a society, sometimes we fall into this white savior complex. And so growing up, as you know, in the history books, you know, I learned that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. I learned that Abraham Lincoln was responsible for basically just about everything that black people have accomplished. You know, that was kind of the message that I received. And as the child of an immigrant from the Congo, I also received this idea that, you know, sort of white people came to Africa and civilized the Africans there as well. And I think this white savior complex is something that needs to be challenged today as well. That you know, we certainly have, you know, we have folks who are overtly racist. You know, we have, and then we also have people who think that they are helping black people, but then sort of are speaking for black people in ways that can be harmful as well. And I think that, you know, for me personally, I think that I reflect a lot on the power of education and the power on the power of having educators who really seek out different perspectives. So the importance of white educators bringing other voices into the classroom, the importance of encouraging young kids of color to go into education, right? Because I feel that education is one way that we can kind of shift the narrative, not only about addressing that overt racism, addressing, you know, the, you know, I mentioned the more things change, the more they stay the same. This, you know, kind of thinking about when we take a couple steps forward in terms of racial progression, a lot of times we end up taking many steps backward. And I think about the Obama-Trump dynamic and how that fits into that bigger picture of that. But I do feel that that education has the power to shift that narrative to a certain extent. And not only education, but getting multiple perspectives, right? So, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts around the role of education, you know, then and now, right?
Certainly education plays a role, and having the proper role models is certainly important as well, and we're grappling with that at the McLean County Museum of History. We give us a very popular social justice history walking tour. I'm one of the two that give it, so it's two old white guys that give the social justice walking tour. And, you know, I think it's time to hand the baton over to somebody younger and perhaps somebody of color, and that's what we're trying to work on. So that's just one example. The question is, you know, how do young people grapple with the Gettysburg Address? I think that's up to them, right? And we've seen a little bit of that. We'll see a little bit more of that later this evening. That when you look at the issue of history, right, the past is not etched in stone, right? Dates are perhaps, the names of individuals, but how we interpret that past is constantly changing and being revised. In fact, oftentimes our interest in the past, what subjects we're interested in, and the interpretations we make say more about our own time period, right, than the past itself, which sometimes isn't necessarily a bad thing. So there's an interplay between the past and the present. You need to respect the past, even though it's been said many a times the past is a strange and foreign land. You need to place yourself in context of the past, read the primary sources, right, but then bring your own personal experiences that perhaps most historians certainly haven't done in the past century or more when they look at somebody like Abraham Lincoln. And Lincoln, as I always say, is like a work of art like Shakespeare's King Lear. You can bounce just about anything off of him, right, and learn something, whether it's depression, gender, but infused in Lincoln's life is race and slavery, right, because that's interwoven in the fabric of our nation, and you just can't escape that from the very beginning to the very present, those issues. And Lincoln's story is part and parcel of that.
Yeah, thanks. And I think, as I reflect on Lincoln also, I think that, as you mentioned, Bill, you know, for his time, Lincoln's views were contrary to what, you know, many people in power were feeling. And I think it's important for people of all races to stand up. You know, just because the loudest voice in the room is saying something doesn't mean that that's the right voice, doesn't mean that that's the truth. And so I think it's important for other people to stand up against that. And so I appreciate, you know, even though I push against this white savior complex, I appreciate the role that Lincoln did play in terms of presenting a view that was not popular for his time and standing, you know, sticking with that. I also think a lot about the idea, and you know, especially hearing the performances earlier, and I'm excited for the performances that are coming up, this idea, especially in hip hop, about remixing, right? That the remix is a powerful concept in hip hop, and that, like, I think that Lincoln's words live today in certain ways because of that idea of remix, you know, and hearing Kao Ra Zen perform them, you know, in a way that just really frame this event, powerfully. And remixing is about recreation, but it's also about reformatting. It's also about making it your own. It's about speaking your own truth, right? So it's about understanding the history, and the more that I think it's a powerful tool to talk about hip hop with young people and talk about how the more you know about history, kind of the more, the more tools you have, right, to speak your truth. Because you're able to throw in references that reference history that might bring people together, right? Both recent history and history further back. But that hip hop is also about speaking your own truth and making it true to you. And I think that's how, words and music really live on through generations. And so I think that the power, there's a lot of potential in that. And those of you who are educators, I think thinking about that idea of remixing and thinking also about the idea that adults and teachers are not the all-knowing educators, and students are not, kind of these people, vessels that need to be filled, right? That young people have so much wisdom. And sometimes teaching is about inspiring young people to share that wisdom, and we can all learn from one another in that respect.
I don't know how we're doing on time. What's that? Okay. Good. Quick wrap up comment. So at the McLean County Museum of History, we're grappling, with this issue which we call Jim Crow Comes to Central Illinois. And as we've heard, in U.S. history, we may take a step forward or take another step forward, but then take a step back. And that certainly was the case at the turn of the last century. We use the example of the Fisk Jubilee Singers from Fisk College, now Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. Well, after the Civil War, they toured the North and popularized black gospel music to white audiences. They're still the Fisk Jubilee Singers today. In the 1880s, when the Fisk Jubilee Singers came to Bloomington, they stayed at the finest hotel and were welcomed. By the 19-teens, 1920s, when the newer version of the Fisk Jubilee Singers comes to Bloomington, there is no downtown Bloomington hotel that will accept African Americans. So the racial climate in this country takes a turn for the worse at the turn of the last century. Bloomington has segregated beaches, racially segregated beaches, the only public beach on the west side of Bloomington at Miller Park, into the 1950s. And we erected an Illinois State Historical Society plaque to that fact several years ago and got some blowback. Why are you bringing up, why are you scratching this wound? This doesn't do our community any good. And as one of the leaders of this movement to get a historic society plaque here said, you need to shine light on the past if we're ever going to move forward, right? We need to disinfect and not ignore the past. And so it's an ongoing struggle for us.
Yeah, I think real quick, I just, I co-sign that line that we need to disinfect, and that, we can't ignore the past, and I think we see history repeating itself over and over again. And, we need to be aware of the past, and we also need to think about how we can move forward collectively, and how we can include people who have been excluded from that conversation. And for me, it's really about building a coalition that, black people have been excluded from that conversation, excluded from that table, and Obama being president did not shift that. And at the same time, there are other people that are also being excluded. The immigrants are being excluded. LGBTQ folk are being excluded. And we need to think about how to make this society truly more inclusive in order to move forward collectively.
So thank you.
Thanks.
Revised address by Cameron Locke. Over 20 score years ago, our captors brought forth upon this country our wounded bodies and traumatized minds to establish a new nation conceived in enslavement and violence, and dedicated to the proposition that all white men are created equal. We continue to be engaged in a great civil war, testing whether the institutionalized processes of injustice and racism can be dismantled by that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated. We are met here on a great battlefield in virtual and in physical of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of it as a final resting place for those who gave their lives. John Lewis, Dorothy Height, Ida B. Wells, Muhammad Ali, Rosa Parks, Shirley Chisholm, and those who were murdered. Fred Hampton, Tatiana Jefferson, Martin Luther King Jr., Marsha P. Johnson, Elijah McClean, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, George Floyd, Malcolm X, Emmett Till, and so on, so that this nation might change. It is altogether fitting and proper that we remember them. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The valiant men and women, living and dead, who fought here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will note and long remember what we say here and what they did here. Instead, it is for us, the living, to be consecrated here to the unfinished work for which they have so far fought and died and so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of breath, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation shall have a birth of freedom, and that this government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall finally be about the people.
That's that piece by Cameron Locke, but I'd like to add, rest in peace to Tyree Nichols.
Wow, thanks. I was supposed to say this earlier, so I'm going to say it now before we turn out the lights and we have L'sGA, that there are restrooms in this direction behind you. There's one also behind me. If this is accessible here, so if you need, though, during the piece, there's going to be lots of lights, and so I just want to warn you about that. A lot of flickering lights, but if you wanted to go that way, there, it's down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, you turn to the right. You go through the costume shop. Here is accessible. Okay? Thank you.
continent. Testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. Yes, Lord. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those that gave their lives for those that gave their lives. Those that gave their lives that nation, that nation might live. It's altogether and fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate. Yes, we cannot consecrate. We cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, have consecrated it. Far above our poor power to add or detract. Yes. Yes. young, remember what we say here. But we cannot forget what we did here. It is for us, the living, to be here here to die the unfinished work that they thus far so nobly carried on. It's all fitting and proper for us to do this. Here to die the great task remaining before us. 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 But from these on a day, we take increased devotion to that cause, which they gave the last full measure of devotion. But we highly resolve that these dead shall not die in vain. That nation, under God, have a new birth for blah, 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 of freedom, rock, smack, search, youth, and that government, of the people, by the people, for the people, should not perish from the earth.
These dead, dying reign of government, when honored dead, highly resolved to cause devotion, punish afterbirth, purple new dead, with three so condolences of government of the people, try the people, fuck the people. It is we who consecrate the dead to life. It is we who dedicate the living to die. Good nation, freedom people, dead task, great trouble, living people, noble dead, civil wars, hollow words, civil war, hollow words, shallow words, hollow words, and ask for the police. Some of them are very fine people, but the world no longer has use for them. The empires have fallen upon the institutions, and the institutions have fallen upon the people. The thought of that great death wiggle, well, it makes me toss and turn and bruise until I'm bruised from trying to fall asleep. If it's sour, then throw it out. 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 If it's sour, then throw it out.
Test, test. Oh, thank you, Willie. Yo! Give it up. So we're going to take about 10-minute intermission, and we're going to reset the stage. Yes, hello. Hi, Dorothy.
Yeah, just one thing.
Yes.
I'll mention it. That was Don Smith, who, Michael and Don and Sal were very, very good friends. And Don also died, and that was him playing organ at the end.
Wow, thank you. Again, accessible bathroom, then down the stairs for the other bathroom. Thank you. Like a reunion. And as a matter of fact, I studied with Sal Martirano. In the late 80s. And one of the things I really admired about Sal was that he was seriously happy. And he was like seriously joyful. And when he got like a new piece of gear or something, he just like was like a kid in a candy store. So he just really loved to see what it would do and what it couldn't do or what he could make it do. And it was a lot of fun. And he was serious about it too. So I think both of those sides are present. Thank you. So there's a change in the program order. So after I get done, we're going to commence with Fate of the Union with Kao Ra Zen. And all of these mannequins you see here were done by Penny Thrasher, known as Bloody Baby. And Bloody Baby Heads, thank you. I didn't write that one word. Bloody Baby Heads. And they represent the colonializing in America. Then we'll follow with Janelle and the score and All the Pretty Little Horses by A.J. McClenon. Thank you. Oh, more? You don't want to be, but you don't want to be dead center because there's a blank spot in the middle. There's a blank spot in the middle. No, I'm not going to do that. Just put it here. I'll grab it. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll grab it when I need it. This is all part of it, yeah.
The business of our nation goes forward.
This is an historic moment.
You realize this is a historical occasion.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Where did all this chaos come from?
Try to take over the world?
If you're a young African American, an immigrant, you can go anywhere in this state. You just need to be conservative, not liberal.
Now, I couldn't go from here across the street, or I couldn't go to nobody's house without I have a note or something from my master.
Dispatching sentries. Dispatching sentries.
Revolutionary-minded Kikuyus like Kenyatta, part educated in Europe, ignored the fact that the government was teaching the Africans to make better use of their land and intended them to assume an increasing responsibility in the country's affairs. The agitators roused tribal grievances with the Kikuyu Central Association and later the Kenya African Union. They worked on the known credulity, suspicion and envy of the tribe. With the cry, "More land for the Kikuyu people," they distorted the true facts to insinuate that the whites had stolen land which belonged to the tribe. These movements, full of corruption and virulent anti-white propaganda, had eventually to be outlawed by the government.
Try to take over the world!
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
New world order.
right. Fight for your life.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Has the government fallen yet? I haven't had a chance to catch up with the telly today. I've been too busy.
Rules were meant to be broken. This country was founded by men who dared to break the rules.
Black people need some peace. White people need some peace. And we are going to have to fight. We're going to have to struggle. We're going to have to struggle relentlessly to bring about some peace, because the people that we're asking for peace, they're a bunch of megalomaniac warmongers, and they don't even understand what peace means. And we've got to fight them. We've got to struggle with them to make them understand what peace means.
Dispatching sentries. Dispatching sentries.
Citizens, your conversation has become subversive. Please modulate accordingly.
Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth, the dignity, the rights of man, that state is obsolete.
Imagine that, bringing down a whole government.
Try to take over the world. Try to take over the world.
A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations.
And so international relations is the highest form of chaos.
Hello.
Hello.
What's your name?
Lotus.
Lotus. Who was Martin Luther King Jr., Lotus?
He's the person that helped the black people.
The what people?
Yeah.
The what people?
The black people that was getting bullied by the white people.
What happened to him?
One of the white people shot him.
Dispatching sentries. Dispatching sentries.
Try to take over the world.
An order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Try to take over the world to save it from the real supervillains.
But I couldn't just walk away like the people just now, you know. We was what they call, we were slaves. We belonged to people. They sell us like they sell horses and cows and hogs and all like that, have an auction bench, and they put you up on the bench and bid on you, the same as you're bidding on cattle, you know.
Los ingobernables!
Laws are merely suggestions.
Revolution is touching all of our lives.
We want to rule our country.
Citizens, your conversation has become subversive. Please modulate accordingly.
If you say, I got black friends, and you can't empathize with what the plight that they're going through right now, you don't have black friends. You know black people.
Troops are in the streets of Nairobi. Sir Evelyn Baring, the governor, salutes the men of the Lancashire Fusiliers who have flown in to help clear his colony of the Mau Mau menace, which has struck fear into Kenya's very heart.
It was the year when they finally immanentized the eschaton.
The world is on fire. Beware all ye that enter here. The end is near. You pray for God to interfere. The hearts of men are insincere. These chaotic times have been engineered. Mass has grown critical. Cash has gone digital. It's getting pivotal for every individual, whether conservative or liberal. And it's one nation divisible, but it's all geopolitical. On and on and on, it's all cyclical. Things are predictable when everybody keeps just acting typical. It's gonna be a long dark night, you better get right with your metaphysical. Cause things starting to feel real biblical. Bump the treble and bass, the whole world's about to be leveled to waste. I'm trying to settle a place where I see angels and devils embracing heaven and hell. It's time to see my brethren rebel. The clock's racing, it's got me pacing from 11 to 12.
And then, it came. The chosen day.
It's clear to me, things ain't always what they appear to be. Haven't discovered the truth, or is it just conspiracy theory? I'm tired of living under tyranny, there is no fear in me. I'm thinking coherently and I'm grounded spiritually. Time keeps on slipping, the doomsday clock's ticking. Plagued and poverty stricken, the plot thickens. The working class tired of being treated less. Some people want to overthrow the oppressor, to play the world of the oppressor. Too much shit going on, some people are folding for the pressure. Out here fighting for scraps while others are holding on to treasure. Uncertainty could turn a strong man timid. Everybody getting pushed to their damn limits. They want to shoot a bullet or a vaccine into my human body. Is it all a scheme of the Illuminati? Everything is being redefined, so free your mind. Gotta read between the lines to see the signs of the time. The world is on fire. The world is on fire.
Why does humankind even bother? You wreck everything you've ever made. Then you start over. Like you'll be any different the next time.
The world is on fire.
Los ingobernables.
Yo, yo.
people need some peace. White people need some peace. And we are going to have to fight. We're going to have to struggle. We're going to have to struggle relentlessly to bring about some peace. Because the people that we're asking for peace, they're a bunch of megalomaniac warmongers, and they don't even understand what peace means. So we've got to fight them. We've got to struggle with them to make them understand what peace means.
Check, check, check. Yo. The pigs got a violent agenda to fire and injure. You could even die and surrender. The cops won't even try to defend you. Without provocation, they can fuck with me. Now I'm the offender, fuck the authorities. We gotta take control. Police ain't nothing but a modern day slave patrol. They portray us like we bad guys. It's the cops and the really thugs. Look at the peaceful protesters getting beat down with billy clubs. On the streets they try to snatch you. If you run, they try to catch you. With their guns pointed at you. And even when they got you, they still got their guns pointed at you. I can give a fuck about a statue of a racist and a rapist. They got us in the matrix. 911 is still a joke. Like they put you on the wait list. They watch you every move. They got us all under surveillance. They want to flood the streets with federal agents.
Also the goddamn law.
FTA, 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 FTA.
Office of the goddamn law.
Yo. My country, Tissabee, has such a hateful history. They rather give me death than liberty. Why must they treat me differently? Law enforcement wickedly leads to black misery. Excuse me, officer, I know no negativity. Can you explain the reason for the attitude you're giving me? My life, I want to live it free. Why would you prohibit me? The moves of control got puppet strings, I see them vividly. Manipulated by a marionette to fuck with me when I ain't nary a threat. Cops neglect crime in the hood. They don't care about poor folks. Fuck the loot, fuck the Magnificent Mile, fuck the Gold Coast. All CNI, they watch me on their monitors. Keep me in a place of a commoner. They want me dead in jail or at the bottom of the social ladder. If black lives don't matter, fuck the authorities.
100 years after you get free, you still getting fucked out of job and shot at by police. You see what I'm saying?
FTA, FTA, FTA.
It is my sad duty to inform you that the pigs are intensifying their approach.
More stringent security measures, universal electronic surveillance, no-knock laws, stop-and-frisk laws, government inspection of all first-class mail, automatic fingerprinting, photographing, blood tests, and urinalysis of any person arrested before he's charged with a crime. A law making it unlawful to resist even unlawful arrest. Laws establishing detention camps for potential subversives, gun control laws, restrictions on travel.
Here we go with the shit again. Pigs still killing unarmed black citizens. The psych was endless and the senseless police occupation got us ducking in the trenches. Judged and executed even when the brother innocent. Police union working for a guilty cop's benefit. They don't really give a fuck about laws when they try to choke you out without probable cause. I got a right to stand for right. We don't survive to hear Miranda rights. They about to force a black man to fight. I ain't trying to have my family holding vigils in my memory by candlelight. So now what I'm poised to do is be a voice for truth. I'm seeing red looking at these boys in blue. George Floyd's life taken seen from heaven by his mother's eyes. And you wonder why I'm fucking tired. I'm tired. We stand upon a precipice. We better pay attention to the messages. The world is falling into woe and wretchedness. The elders have left us only vestiges and ruins and wreckages. People seeking refuges, gathered for the exodus. There's a thin blue line between truth and lies. Those who are wise are often heavily scrutinized and crucified.
The Messiah can manifest rocking a black hoodie. The Antichrist can show up wearing suits and ties. In every incarnation, they'll put on a new disguise with a promise of paradise, greener grass and bluer skies. Get us all unified, get your soul purified. Put a Kool-Aid grin on your face, mass suicide. And every other hipster think they a modern day Krishna. Some of these people preaching the scriptures ain't nothing but tricksters. They want you to forget the big picture. Give in to superstition. Follow the leader, follow the breadcrumbs, follow the true religion. Oh, what a tangled web we weave, when in false prophets we believe. Oh, what a tangled web we weave, yeah. Oh, what a tangled web we weave, when in false prophets we believe. Oh, what a tangled web we weave, yeah. War is big business and death magic. Flags are chaos sigils. The Pentagon is exactly what you think it is. It's morning in America, and the awakened have yet to sleep. We're mourning in America, for what we've sown, we must now reap. It's morning in America. The sun's about to shine upon a brand new day. And we're mourning in America. Please take their guns away.
4 and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
So you're telling me that over 160 years ago, this nation was conceived in liberty and furthermore dedicated to creating all men equal? Get the hell out of here. This nation was built on lies, insufferable lies, and deceit, and you want me to be spoon-fed into thinking all was well? What is your definition of equal? Because from where I stand, you still have slaves cooking up your family's meals. And those families are being raped and beaten and torn apart. And you want me to see the fairness in this?
Now we are engaged in a great civil war.
A war was created, not to test whether this nation was ever dedicated or to see how it could endure. It was created out of greed and a sense of entitlement. Oh, you don't like my words? I'm so sorry. But his story was not told in the right manner, and definitely left a sour taste in the mouths of all that suffered under his hand. A broken back with a little more gristle on our plate is still a broken back. Theft, even if offered with a veil of a warm stank blanket, is still theft. The only thing that was dedicated was blood. The only offering was suffering, and the only victory was really defeat. You want us to believe that it was altogether fitting and proper, that it was all right to do this? You can stand on that podium with your many slaves sitting in your home right now and pretend that this was all for our betterment? The lies. The lies.
Testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure.
Endure what?
We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that the nation might live.
A resting place? There will never be any rest so as long as my brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews are in bondage. Those who have fallen prey to the lies of the system, set in place to fulfill their greed for more money, more land, the insatiable hole that won't ever be filled.
It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this.
I wept.
But in a larger sense, we can dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggled here have consecrated here, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here.
Oh, we will remember, and we will forever let it be known. We won't stop yelling out the injustice. We won't ever stop screaming for better. Our ancestors will rise up and tell it from their graves, and we will forever be their mouthpiece.
It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced.
And there is unfinished work to be done. There was nothing noble about what you all did and the words you all spoke. You were dedicated to keeping your way of life comfy while making sure we knew nothing of our true place in the world. You stripped us of any value until we truly began to believe this was the only way, still to this day. Then, to add insult to injury, you offer us a dirty bone as recompense. Shame on you.
It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us.
And pray tell, what might that truly be?
That from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolved to these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
Honor the dead while still killing the living? Don't make me laugh. Years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on the great battlefield of war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in the larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our own poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they fought here, have us thus far nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we are here highly resolved that these dead shall have not died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Abraham Lincoln, November 19th, 1863.
From every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city. We will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
have no accounts, no accurate knowledge of my age. Never having seen any authentic record containing it. By far, the larger part of the slaves know as little of their ages as horses know of theirs. Though the horse is certainly a representative of what is lost, it is also an unlikely ally, one that shares the experience of existing both inside and outside the parameters of plantation time. The horse is a creature that likewise has no narrative of origin, no chronological orientation outside its relationship to the slaver's clock, and is thus also constantly moving between the realm of organism and machine, between occupying a space of self-determination and being configured as a living commodity. I'd like to take the time to dedicate a song to my father, who many knew as Big Tree. It was a work song, often sung in the American South on chain gangs. My father served in the U.S. Marines at the age of 17 until coming back with severe PTSD and faced many chain gangs himself in the prison industrial complex. Take this hammer and carry it to the captain. Take this hammer and carry it to the captain. Take this hammer and carry it to the captain. Tell him I'm gone, boys. Tell him I'm gone. If he asks you, was I running? If he asks you, was I running? If he asks you, was I running? Tell him I was flying, boys. Tell him I was flying. If he asked you, was I laughing? If he asked you, was I laughing? If he asked you, was I laughing? Tell him I was crying, boy. Tell him I was crying. Take this hammer and carry it to the captain. Take this hammer, carry it to the captain. Take this hammer and carry it to the captain. Tell him I'm gone, boys. Tell him I'm gone.
thank you, everyone. I want a round of applause for, that was AJ, and then Janelle is around here somewhere. Kay was right here. Willie had to get in his car and go to Ohio. He's giving a talk tomorrow at his alma mater, and then we're going to do the show in Chicago. So it's been a long show, a long program. If you want to hang out, ask questions, the artists are here. If anyone wants to have a formal thing, we'll pull out chairs, but I don't know if we want to do that. We're here. Okay, thank you so much.